In this video, we're going to look at discovery. This is the process that we use to direct the Statseeker server to identify and establish communications with the elements of the network that we want to monitor. The first time we see discovery is during the final stages of the installation process. Here, I have a new server that I've just finished licensing, and one of the options is Discover Network. Hitting this, we are asked to select IP address ranges. It being a new server, I don't have any of those yet, so I'm going to create one. Name the configuration and specify some include and exclude ranges. What's the scope of this IP address range configuration? And I can add as many additional IP range configurations as needed, and I can always come back and do more later. Statseeker will monitor devices via both ICMP and SNMP. And for SNMP, we need the credentials for the device. Name the configuration. Select the SNMP version. For SNMP v1 and 2, we just need the community string. For SNMP v3, we have options for encryption, privacy, context. I then select which ranges and which credentials I want to use and start discovery. Here we've got a running discovery indicating the current step and the outcome of completed steps in the discovery process. We've also got a detailed discovery log. This is just a small range, only containing 60 or 70 devices, so it'll only take a couple of minutes, but I'm just going to speed it up so we get through it very quickly. On completion, we have access to the log and to download the log and the full discovery data. And this includes the configuration elements that went into the discovery process, and they can be very useful in troubleshooting discovery issues. I'll hit finish and go to the console. And here we can see all of the devices that Statseeker located during the discovery. These devices are now being monitored by Statseeker. After the install, we can head to the admin tool under Network Discovery. We have our SNMP credentials, and we have the options to manage our sets of credentials. Now, if changes are made on devices and we need to update the credentials Statseeker is using for those devices, then we have a couple of ways to proceed. One of these is assign credentials. I can filter the list to help locate the devices in question, select them, and assign the new credentials. Options in the Discovery and Rewalk processes also offer this ability, and we'll touch on those a little later. Heading off to the IP ranges, we have the range that we added previously and the ability to add new range configurations. We've also got the option here to import ranges from a file. The syntax is presented, and it's the same syntax for specifying the IP range, one statement per line. We just need to prefix the line with either include or exclude. Lines without a prefix are treated as an include. Select your file and import. Give it a name and save the new configuration. If you have a range that you typically don't want to pass through to discovery, then you can disable them and they'll be ignored by the discovery process. Off to discovery. Here we have our network discovery, and it's similar to what we saw previously. Hitting run now will reference all of the SNMP credentials that we saved and target all of the enabled IP ranges. But we can customize discovery, targeting only a subset of the network and referencing a selection of the credentials. If you have a specific purpose, tailoring the discovery can greatly reduce the time required to run it. We also have the options to use the contents of the server's host file rather than your IP range configurations. The host file is available under Network Discovery Advanced Options, Host File. Where the IP range configurations are IPv4 only, the host file can handle IPv4 and IPv6 addresses. Basic syntax, IP address, one or more spaces, device name, one device per line. We can further tailor the discovery process with the advanced options. How will Discovery handle known devices, those that have been discovered previously? I'm only wanting to discover the new devices that I've just added to the network so I can ignore known devices, speeding up discovery. Or I can rediscover known devices. The default option of retesting credentials for SNMP down devices is one of the other methods for updating which credentials are assigned to a device. Custom data type discovery is enabled by default. So as CDT packages are applied to your server, enabling the collection of new data types, Discovery will test your devices to see which of those are able to return that new data, and then you'll start polling it immediately. The SNMP options has a range of settings which can be used to fine-tune communications with devices that are having trouble communicating with the Statseeker server. Now, some of these options will impact both the performance and the output of Discovery, and generally, you'll only want to be adjusting these values under guidance from Statseeker support. The monitoring options we see here look at interface monitoring. Do we want to monitor Opera status and admin status? And do we collect metrics on non-unicast data? The default values for these options can be set in Network Discovery Advanced Options. In the Discovery section, adjust the defaults as needed and hit Save. The last section is Post-Discovery Actions. Send an email alert when discovery completes, and options for which auto-grouping rules to run, your custom auto-grouping rules, and the default interface speed and type rules. Again, the default values for these can be set in Advanced Options in the Grouping section. Now, the network discovery will discover devices and they will then be monitored via ICMP and SNMP. The ping-only discovery will set newly discovered devices as ping-only devices, and Statseeker will only monitor them via ICMP. Data will be restricted to pin metrics, RTT, jitter, packet loss. And the options presented are restricted to how to handle secondary IPs on known devices and our post-discovery actions. The remote ping-only is just ping-only discoveries, but they're run from a deployed observability appliance. And here we have our manual device addition. To discover a single device, simply specify the IP, your device name, and what credentials to use. Or you can discover multiple devices. This option requires a CSV file. The file needs a header row. So just download the example file, update the content, and you can't go wrong. Manual device addition has the same advanced options as network discovery. And lastly, the rewalk. And this is a variation of discovery which doesn't discover new devices. Rather, it processes known devices looking for changes and updating the Statseeker configuration in response. The default rewalk targets all known devices, but you can tailor that to selected groups of devices or individually specify the rewalk targets. Again, the same advanced options as the network discovery. Now, the Statseeker server automatically runs a rewalk at 11 a.m. server time every day. This is a method to ensure that configuration that Statseeker has for each monitored device is up to date, and this daily schedule can be modified to run at a different time or multiple times per day or less frequently. To schedule the rewalk, we head off to Expert Tools, Cron tab, and we see here the entry for the daily rewalk. I'm just going to copy the entry as a template. We have our schedule here and the discovery type flag here. Restrict your changes to these values. Do not edit anything else in the stream. I'll head off to the documentation so we can reference the allowed values. From the help menu, select documentation, under discovery, scheduling, rewalk, and discovery. Here's our syntax. So we have minutes, hours, day of the month, and day of the week, and our allowed values, and some syntax notes. And we have the discovery flag here. And we can see that you can configure a rewalk or turn it into a discovery via ranges or via hosts. Now be mindful of when you schedule these processes to run. It's only a single discovery process can be running at a time on the server. Back in discovery, I'll just kick off a rewalk. And then if we head back, we can see that we have a rewalk running and the option to initiate a discovery is unavailable. The recent discoveries contains historical discovery records, offering the same options as the discovery completion screen. For most users, Statseeker stores years of discovery records. But if your server is monitoring a particularly large network, say in excess of 500,000 interfaces, then you'll have between 3 and 6 months worth of discovery records. And that's a look at Statseeker's discovery process. There's a lot more detail on discovery and associated functionality in the documentation.